The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen, we're going to show more of that hearing that Senator Blumenthal convened today that you discussed with him. And the stories told there by the survivors of ICE violence, shootings that ICE has done, prove that this really now could happen to any of us. If you think you're living in a way that means ICE agents will never take a shot at your car, that is no longer true. That is now possible. And that was proved in that hearing today. And we're going to bring that testimony.
It was American citizens, and it keeps sitting with me, Lawrence, that they couldn't even get access to medical care after they were in a position where they needed it. Just one detail, but I'll be looking forward to watching. It was a really powerful hearing today.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you.
Thanks, Lawrence.
At one of the darkest hours in Irish history, after the failed Easter uprising in Dublin against British rule, the Irish poet William Butler Yeats wrote a poem about that moment in history titled Easter 1916. It has this passage that I've never forgotten and came to mind today in our dark times. Too long a sacrifice can make a stone of the heart. Oh, when may it suffice? That is heaven's part. Our part to murmur name upon name as a mother names her child when sleep at last has come on limbs that had run wild. Our part to murmur name upon name. He meant the names of the Irish heroes who fell in death in that failed uprising against British rule in 1916. And today was a day to murmur name upon name, to honor name upon name of those who have been killed by Donald Trump's invasion forces in American cities. Renee Good, Alex Preddy, Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, and others. It happened in a hearing room in Congress where no Republican dared to tread. Not one. Not one. If Renee Good could tell her story, would anyone listen? If Alex Preddy could tell his story now of what happened on that street before two of Donald Trump's agents fired at least 10 shots at him, would anyone listen? If Renee Good and Alex Preddy had somehow miraculously survived the gunshot wounds inflicted on them when they posed no threat to anyone, would anyone listen to them now? Renee Good and Alex Preddy found their ultimate power in death. They have captured the world's attention. The world knows their names because they died, because they were murdered, and because we saw their murders on video. But what power would they have had if they survived? Would we all be able to murmur name upon name? Would we remember their names? Or would their names be lost in the horror stories of the Trump invasion forces? If Renee Good and Alex Preddy had somehow miraculously survived those gunshot wounds, they would have testified to Congress today. And not one Republican would have listened to them. Not one. They would have testified to Congress today, and much of the news media would ignore much or all of their testimony. They would have testified to Congress today in a hearing that no one in the right-wing media will pay attention to, no one consuming right-wing media will even know about. If Renee Good and Alex Preddy had somehow lived, they would have testified to Congress today, and they would have seen that not a single Republican showed up at a combined hearing of senators and House members. Not a single Republican dared to set foot in that room today and offer one word of defense for what was accurately called murder today by the always legally careful Senator Richard Blumenthal, who previously served as the Attorney General of the state of Connecticut and was a former federal prosecutor. Senator Blumenthal was the Senate co-chair of the meeting, along with his House co-chair of the meeting, Congressman Robert Garcia. victims of the criminal violence unleashed by Donald Trump's invasion forces testified at the hearing today, including one 30-year-old Montessori school teacher, Miramar Martinez, who survived 7 gunshot wounds. 7 gunshot wounds. Those bullets were fired at her for absolutely no reason. In his opening remarks, Senator Blumenthal said this.
With us in spirit are also Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy, in spirit. They should be here in person, but they were murdered. They were murdered by their own government. They were killed in cold blood.
In cold blood. The first victim of the crimes of Donald Trump's invasion force to testify today, Miramar Martinez, an American citizen born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, where one of Donald Trump's ICE agents tried to murder her. Agent Charles Exum celebrated his attempted murder of Miramar Martinez in texts to his obviously criminally minded teammates.
It's disgusting, shameful, and it gets worse. Ms. Martinez, these are images of texts sent by the agent who shot you. And they're actually disturbing to read, but I think it's important for the public to see this. The agent linked an article about your shooting and texted, read it, 5 shots, 7 holes. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. Oh, well, it is what it is. Happens. This is someone that works for the United States government. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Now, he was talking about you, and it's our understanding that he was actually bragging about his aim shooting an unarmed American citizen. Is that right?
Correct.
Miramar Martinez remembered Renee Good, Alex Preddy, and other dead victims of Donald Trump's invasion force in her testimony.
When I get dressed and I stare at my body, now permanently disfigured by the 5 lead bullets Exum fired into me. They will be there this summer when I head to the beach with my dogs and family. They will be there when I get down on the floor with my students and work with them on their motor skills. And perhaps even worse, the mental scars will always be there as a reminder of the time my own government attempted to execute me, and when they fell, they chose to vilify me. I am Renee Good. I am Alex Preddy. I am Silverio Villegas Gonzalez. I am Keith Porter. They should all be here today. I know each of them would trade my bullet wounds, a lifetime of mental distress, and a heartbeat to be able to be back with their loved ones this afternoon.
She is a miracle because she lived. She said in her opening remarks, quote, "As a 30-year-old USA citizen with no criminal history, I believed that I had nothing to worry about." Her story proves that we all have something to worry about. Donald Trump's invasion force can decide to shoot and kill any one of us at any time. What you are about to hear are stories of life in Donald Trump's America, and you will hear stories about death in Donald Trump's America when you hear the testimony today from Renee Good's brothers, who talked about the light she brought into this world before she was murdered by ICE agent Jonathan Ross, who was put on that street by Donald Trump. If on a Saturday morning you are on your way to church to donate some clothes, as Miramar Martinez was, this is what can happen to you now in Donald Trump's America.
The Border Patrol vehicle stopped just 1 to 2 car lengths ahead of me. It seemed like time stopped. I knew from watching the news coverage of other Border Patrol encounters in Chicago that I was in danger. I watched the vehicle of Border Patrol agent killing Silverio Villegas Gonzalez just 3 weeks prior. I knew I had to get to safety before I was dragged from my car and likely beaten or killed. I drove forward and went around the Border Patrol agents, who jumped out of his car and pointed his gun at me. I moved to the far left lane, striking the curb on the far left side of Kedzie. The next thing I knew, I felt a burning sensation in my arms, legs, and that I had been shot by pepper balls, which I also seen these agents fire at people in our community. As I continued to drive past the Border Patrol agents, I could hear my back passenger window shatter, and I felt bullets continue to pierce my body. As I attempted to drive to a safe location, I began to feel lightheaded. I looked down and I noticed blood gushing out of my arms and legs, and I realized I'd been shot multiple times. As I became lightheaded, I became worried I would pass out and endanger other drivers on the road. I managed to drive a mile from where the incident happened, and I pulled into a parking lot of a mechanic shop, and I called 911. I told the 911 operator that Border Patrol agents had just shot me and I needed help. I recall some of the workers from the shop sitting me down in a chair as I was waiting for help, but I was losing this battle. I saw my life flash before me and slowly began to think this was the end for me. And before losing consciousness, the next thing I remember is the EMT putting me on a stretcher, taking me to the hospital. At the hospital, I remember seeing multiple agents standing around, watching me be treated for my wounds. My arms, legs, and chest were all wrapped in bandages. I had 7 bullet holes in my body. I remember the agents rushing the nurses to finish up so they could take me with them. I still felt dizzy. I was not able to fully process what had happened to me. After being at the hospital for less than 3 hours, I was discharged from the hospital and took custody of the FBI.
That could be you. That could be your sister. That could be your mother. That could be anyone now in Donald Trump's America. She was hit by 5 bullets, creating 7 gunshot wounds because some of the bullets had created exit wounds before re-entering the body, possibly passing through her arm and then into her chest. That's how you get more wounds than the number of bullets fired. And that agent is very proud that his bullets did that kind of damage. She was still bleeding after those 3 hours in the emergency room, and Donald Trump's agents dragged her out of that hospital and put her in jail that Saturday night to spend the weekend in jail. I was in a car accident once where I broke some bones, and I was in the hospital for 12 days, and I didn't have a single bullet wound. When Donald Trump's agents try to kill you, they really try to kill you. And if they don't kill you on the street, they will try to kill you by dragging you out of the hospital if they can. And that is not a mistake. Dragging a wounded young woman out of the hospital, that is a willful attempt to kill her. But Miramar Martinez is a miracle, because Miramar Martinez just wouldn't die.
The news in the jail that evening had my story and was being called a domestic terrorist. They said I quote unquote rammed federal agents. I was in shock. If they only knew I was a month away from paying off my truck and I would never intentionally damage my vehicle, much less be crazy enough to hit a law enforcement. On Friday, I was teaching the young children at the Montessori school, and we were singing and dancing and getting ready for spooky season, preparing fall activities to do the following week. And on Saturday, my own government was calling me a domestic terrorist. And I was in federal detention centers with the bullet holes all over my body.
And then in court on the next Monday morning, Donald Trump's prosecutors wanted to keep Miramar Martinez in jail awaiting trial, in jail indefinitely. The judge saw a courtroom full of parents from the school where she's a teacher and her family there supporting her, and the judge listened to the evidence, and he immediately released her. And then Agent Charles Exum drove the car that he jumped out of that day from Chicago to Maine. That's right, he willfully removed the important evidence in the case, the vehicle which he claims Miramar Martinez tried to ram. And he drove that car across the country to get it out of the case. There must have been absolutely no damage on that car. There must have been no evidence on that car that could possibly have helped their case. And then Donald Trump's invasion force and Donald Trump's federal prosecutors just dropped the charges against Miramar Martinez and thereby proved that they were lying, that she never tried to ram their car, because they never would have dropped the charges for that. They proved by dropping those charges there was absolutely no reason to fire a single shot at her. The 30-year-old Montessori school teacher who Donald Trump's liars called a domestic terrorist was never charged with a crime. They tried to murder her, but never charged her with a crime. Who are the domestic terrorists in that story? None of the victims of the Trump-encouraged violence testifying in today's hearing were ever charged with a crime. The next victim, another American citizen, was from Minneapolis.
My name is Aliyah Rahman, and I am a resident of South Minneapolis. I'm a Bangladeshi American, born in northern Wisconsin, and I'm a disabled person with autism and a traumatic brain injury. Not all autistic brains do this, but mine fixates on sounds, numbers, and patterns. On January 13th, on the way to my 39th appointment at Hennepin County's Traumatic Brain Injury Center, I encountered a traffic jam caused by ICE vehicles and no signs indicating how to get around it. I had not wanted to pull into a blocked, chaotic intersection, but verbally agreed to do so and rolled down my window after an agent yelled, "Move! I will break your effing window!" His first instruction. Agents on all sides of my vehicle yelled conflicting threats and instructions that I could not process while watching for pedestrians. Then the glass of the passenger side window flew across my face. I yelled, "I'm disabled," at the hands grabbing at me, and an agent said, "Too late." I felt immersed in a pattern, and I thought of Genoa Donald, an autistic Black man killed by police during a traffic stop in 2021. I remembered Mr. Sliberio Vega Gonzalez, who was killed by ICE in his vehicle last year. An agent pulled a large combat knife in front of my face, which I thought was for cutting me, and later learned was used to cut off my seatbelt. Shooting pain went through my head, neck, and wrists when I hit the ground face first and people leaned on my back. I felt the pattern, and I thought of Mr. George Floyd, who was killed 4 blocks away. I was carried face down through the street by my cuffed arms and legs while yelling that I had a brain injury and was disabled. I now cannot lift my arms normally. I was never asked for ID, never told I was under arrest, never read my rights, and never charged with a crime. I received no medical screening, phone call, or access to a lawyer. I was denied a communication navigator when my speech began to slur. Agents laughed as I tried to immobilize my own neck. I asked for my cane and was told no, pulled up my arms and prodded forward in leg irons by agents laughing and saying, "Walk, you can do it, walk." Agents did not know if the facility had a wheelchair. When I was finally placed in one to be taken to interrogation, an agent taunted, "You were driving, right? So your legs do work." I pleaded for emergency medical care for over an hour after my vision had become blurry, my heart rate went through the roof, and the pain in my neck and head became unbearable. It was denied. When I became unable to speak, my cellmate pleaded for me. The last sounds I remember before I blacked out on the cell floor were my cellmate banging on the door, pleading for a medic, and a voice outside saying, "We don't want to step on ICE's toes. We call ourselves a civilized nation, but we lack rules and accountability around what a person claiming to be law enforcement is permitted to do to another human being." I am not afraid, and I'm not afraid to keep working on this problem even after ICE is gone. Thank you for your time.
That could happen to you. That could happen to your mother, your sister, your grandmother, your cousin. It could happen to anyone now in Donald Trump's America. And the video you're about to see proves that. What happened to Elia Rahman? You're about to see in this video the most horrible cowards ever employed by the federal government at work for the most horrible coward to ever occupy the White House.
Hey, back up! Sidewalk, 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 sidewalk. Force is not law! Force is not law! You are not doing the law! This is your duty! Why don't you help that woman? Help that woman! Why don't you help someone? All you do is hurt! All you do is hurt! She's trying to drag on the street! Where is the...
All the crimes committed on these videos are committed by Donald Trump's invasion force cowards. Tonight, at this hour, as Yates would put it, we murmur name upon name of the victims. You will hear more of their testimony. Congressman Jamie Raskin joins us next. Antonio Romanucci, an attorney for Renee Good's family, testified to the joint House-Senate hearing today where not a single Republican showed up to offer one word of defense for the crimes committed by Donald Trump's invasion forces against American citizens in American cities.
The United States legal system allows for individuals to pursue civil justice with the suit against a city, county, or state for the conduct of its officers and against the officers individually. These types of legal claims are made under what is called 42 U.S. Code Section 1983. This was part of the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1871 and is essential for accountability when an officer behaves unconstitutionally. Keep in mind that this act is 155 years old and desperately needs an amendment. However, similar legal action against federal law enforcement officers like ICE or Border Patrol is not currently allowed under Section 1983. There is a current possible path of civil recovery through the Federal Tort Claims Act, or FTCA, but this is challenging. It requires first the filing of a claim with the government agency that has harmed you, and then waiting up to 6 months for a reply. Our current paradox is that America should not require the permission of the federal government to sue the federal government for cases like Renee Good or Alex Preddy. If the government must give you permission to seek accountability for violation of constitutional rights, then your rights are just words on paper. There is a legislative remedy to this paradox. At the state level, Minnesota and other states can pass bills making it a state law to violate constitutional rights. In Illinois, we did this by signing House Bill 1312. Congress can remove this roadblock to federal accountability by amending Section 1983 and adding 4 words, as you, Senator Blumenthal, pointed out, so federal officers can be sued civilly if their conduct merits it. The current language spells out that state, county, and municipal law enforcement can be sued, and Congress would only need to add the words "or the United States" to the list of governments whose officers could be brought to civil justice. It's that simple. I'm urging you to consider this amendment and fix a 155-year-old problem.
Leading off our discussion tonight, Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin of Maryland. He's the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee. He will be chairman of the Judiciary Committee if the Democrats win the House of Representatives. Congressman Raskin, that proposed change in law would come to your committee. What is your assessment of that proposal?
Well, Lawrence, we've been fighting for this for the last several Congresses with my colleague Hank Johnson from Georgia. We have introduced legislation to create a federal Bivens action because the Supreme Court had originally allowed this. It's been successively undermined by subsequent decisions. So we could amend Section 1983 to sweep in federal officers. We could also amend the Federal Tort Claims Act so people could actually sue the government for damages. And we believe it's essential to solidify the social contract. The scenes that you just showed us are so gruesome and so demoralizing because what you see is a government at war with its own people. And the whole point of the social contract is that we will be safer entering into civil society together. That's what John Locke said. That's what Rousseau said. That's what Hobbes said. Than we would be if we stayed in a state of nature where it's just everybody fighting for themselves. Well, they're giving us a situation where we are no longer safer inside civil society. They've turned the social contract into a war of the government against the people. And so we have to restore the social contract. That's what we can do once we take back the Congress, but we are depending on people all over the country to stay in this fight. The heroic resistance that we've seen in Minneapolis is a model for what's got to take place all over America and in the upcoming No Kings rally. I was rereading the old Václav Havel essay that he wrote in 1978 called The Power of the Powerless, basically saying when you're up against an authoritarian regime, everybody's got to decide, are you going to live within the lie or are you going to step outside of the lie and live inside the truth? And I thought about that because I saw a sign at one of the rallies in Minneapolis which said, "We have eyes, stop the lies." And I think that's where America is right now.
So Congressman Garcia had a moment in the hearing where he said, I just want to remind people that Kristi Noem won't be secretary forever. Donald Trump won't be president forever, suggesting that 3 years from now we could have a Democratic president. We could have a new attorney general. that Justice Department would be empowered to do real criminal investigations of these shootings, of these beatings, and of these arrests. And so those agents may all get a federal pardon from Donald Trump so that the federal government won't be able to do that in the next administration. But without that pardon, this remains an open possibility for the next Justice Department to investigate, doesn't it?
Of course. Well, we're going to have real attorney generals again. People like Robert F. Kennedy, people like Edward Levy, people like Janet Reno. We're going to have a real Justice Department again. We're going to have a real criminal division again that brings criminal actions against government officials who violate the civil rights of the people. We are going to restore and we're going to fortify and improve the rule of law. And we know it's not as simple as just turning the clock back to the time before Donald Trump, because obviously those were the conditions that allowed for Donald Trump and MAGA to penetrate our society and take over our government. We're going to have to fortify democracy and freedom to make them much stronger going forward. And having been through this nightmare together and with the heroic resistance and opposition that we're seeing all over the country, we're going to make it through. We need to obviously mobilize the vote and keep winning the way we won in Virginia, in New Jersey, in California, in Alabama, the way we just won in Texas, a 31-point swing in a state Senate election. We're going to keep going, and we have to defend those elections because Donald Trump, who obviously has no other program for America relating to health care, relating to housing for young people, relating to any public good, has one objective in mind, which is trying to steal the election the way he tried to steal it back in 2020 when he called the Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger in Georgia, and said, I just want you to find me 11,780 votes. That wasn't Donald Trump trying to stop election fraud. That was Donald Trump trying to commit election fraud. And he did it all over the country, and he will try again. But we are ready for him, and we have people fighting all over America to defend the democratic institutions that we've got.
Congressman Jamie Raskin, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
You bet, Lawrence.
Thank you. And coming up, 23-year-old Daniel Raskin had his life changed in 3 minutes by Donald Trump's invasion force, who started shooting at the car that he was in for no reason. He lived to tell the story to Congress today. You'll hear his testimony next. The third victim of Donald Trump's invasion force to testify at today's hearing was Daniel Raskin. No Republican showed up to hear a word he or any of the other witnesses said about the crimes committed by Donald Trump's invasion forces. Daniel Raskin is 23 years old. He's the father of a 3-week-old baby girl. He's a forklift operator who just got his dental assistant certification. And this is his story.
The morning of August 16th, 2025 would quickly become unforgettable, especially because my future father-in-law, Francisco Longoria, wanted me to run an errand with him and his son, Jonathan, when all I really wanted to do was just sleep in. We took Jonathan's truck with him sitting in the passenger seat, Francisco driving, and me sitting behind Francisco, when we were just 2 minutes away from home. At 8:49 a.m., 2 unmarked trucks suddenly boxed in our car. I had been looking down at my phone, but when our car abruptly stopped, I looked up thinking we must be at a red light or in a traffic jam. But to my surprise, I was instead met with four men in face masks, sunglasses, and baseball caps, and guns drawn, pointing straight at us, walking towards our car. These 4 men then tried forcing their way into our car by pulling on the handles, pounding on the windows and yelling at us to roll down the windows, all while failing to answer our repeated requests for their identification and what they wanted. I did not know who these men were. They were refusing to identify themselves, and the only thing I felt I could do, I could control, was capturing this event by recording it on my cell phone. There were 2 men on either side of the car, and they were not wearing any uniform. I could not tell who these men surrounding our car with guns were. We again asked them to show identification and why they were approaching us with so much aggression. Only seconds after they started pounding on the windows, one of the men broke the driver's side window, punched Francisco in the face, and began reaching into the car. At the same time, a man on the other side of the car broke the passenger window where Jonathan was sitting and began reaching into the vehicle. They shattered the windows, and in that moment, the whole world felt like it was the size of the inside of our pickup. And we were sitting in harm's way with nothing to do but record the horrifying experience. Terrified for our lives, Francisco bravely drove straight through the only open pathway down the street, hoping to be driving towards safety, when we were instead met with gunfire. After we had passed the men, one of the 4 men attempted to murder us after we passed by, as he fired and made contact with the passenger side of our car multiple times. I will never forget the fear and having to quickly duck my head as the shots were fired at the car. Any one of those bullets could have killed me or 2 people that I love. We narrowly escaped as pieces of glass fell on our heads as we drove down the bumpy road. 3 minutes changed our lives forever. We then called 911 to report that 4 men who were hiding their identity assaulted and shot at us. By 9 a.m., a police helicopter was flying over our property. Next thing we know, local officers showed up at our home, handcuffed Francisco, put him in the officer's car, and began individually questioning us. The officers then allowed the same 4 men who had just attacked us to come to our home. Those 4 men were asked to identify who they were looking for, but they had zero idea as to who they were even targeting.
Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury said this.
This should not happen to anyone in America. It should not be happening to U.S. citizens. It should not be happening to immigrants. It should not be happening to anyone in America. I don't care who you are or what your identity is or how your status is under the law in this country. This should not be happening in the United States. And there are systems in place to provide a check and balance to make sure that this does not happen to people in our country. And so to hear your stories and to hear the violence that is being committed in our communities against our people, and then to see White House officials, the President of the United States, disparaging entire communities, going after members of Congress, the Vice President telling the American people that these individuals have total immunity, to see Kristi Noem go on national television and lie about you, to lie about you, that they're tampering with evidence, and then to see that the actual agents committing these crimes, because I want to be clear, these are crimes. This is not in the line of duty. You don't shoot, murder, and harm people in the line of duty. That is a crime.
And coming up, the last witnesses we will hear tonight are the brothers of Renee Good, who will honor their sister and give her voice in their testimony. That's next. They call her Nay. That's the short version of Renee that Renee Good's brothers use when they're talking about their sister. They were the first witnesses to testify in today's joint House-Senate hearing, where not a single Republican showed up to offer one word of defense about the killing of Renee Good, which former federal prosecutor Richard Blumenthal, who also served as Connecticut's Attorney General, called murder in the hearing.
My name is Luke Ganger, and I'm here with my brother Brent. Renee Good is our sister. In the last few weeks, our family took some consolation, thinking that perhaps Nay's death would bring about change in our country. And it has not. The completely surreal scenes taking place on the streets of Minneapolis are beyond explanation. This is not just a bad day or a rough week or isolated incidents. These encounters with federal agents are changing the community and changing many lives, including ours, forever. Our family is a very American blend. We vote differently, and we rarely completely agree on the finer details of what it means to be a citizen of this country. We attend various churches and some not at all. And despite those differences, we have always treated each other with love and respect. And we've gotten even closer during this very divided time in our country. And we hope that our family can be even a small example to others, not to let political ideals divide us.
When I think of Renee, I think of dandelions and sunlight. Dandelions don't ask permission to grow. They push through cracks in the sidewalk, through hard soil, through places where you don't expect beauty, and suddenly there they are, bright, alive. Unapologetically hopeful. That was Renee. And sunlight, warm, steady, life-giving. Nene loved fiercely, openly, and without hesitation. As a mother, Renee poured herself into love. The kind of love that shows up every day, that sacrifices quietly, that cheers loudly, that believes deeply. Her children were and are her heart. Walking around outside her body. And she made sure they felt safe, valued, and endlessly loved. As a sister, she was constant. Someone you could lean on, laugh with, or just sit in silence beside. She had a way of making you feel understood, even when you didn't have the words yet. She didn't just listen, she saw you. She believed that kindness mattered, and she lived that belief. Even when things were hard, Nay looked for the light. And if she couldn't find it, she became the light for somebody else. That's why the image of dandelions feels so right. People try to pull them up, overlook them, dismiss them, but they keep coming back, stronger, brighter, spreading seeds of hope everywhere they land. Renee planted those seeds in all of us. In her children, in her family, in friends, coworkers, and people who maybe didn't even realize they needed her light at the time. And sunlight. Sunlight doesn't ask for recognition. It just gives. It warms, it nurtures, it helps things grow. Renee did that for us. She helped us grow. She helped us believe in ourselves. She helped us see the good, even when life felt heavy. Renee is not gone from us. She's in the light that finds us on hard days. She's in the resilience we didn't know we had until we needed it. She's in the laughter, the memories, the love that continues to grow. Like dandelions, like sunlight, and like Renee. Thank you.
We'll be right back. Renee Good's brothers, Luke and Brent, get tonight's last word.